Extremely warm ocean waters in the Pacific may be responsible for the deaths of as many as 1 million seabirds. Scientists have been tracking the heated waters, and formerly known as the blob now, the ocean blob, for years. It's a 1,000-mile stretch of ocean that is as much as 10 degrees warmer than the surrounding waters. The dead birds and a fish-eating species were starved to death between the summer of 2015 and the spring of 2016, and they washed up on the shores from California all the way up to Alaska.
Beach, which is quite beautiful this time in the late afternoon. It was actually about this time yesterday afternoon when a longtime resident was taking a walk on the beach. He came across something that was very disturbing.
I was walking down the beach last night and early this morning, and I saw 6 of these shorebirds.
John Cabasakalis has been walking Alameda's Crown Beach since he was a kid, and he's never seen anything quite like this before. A half-dozen dead birds, all in the last 24 hours.
The marine heat wave out in the Pacific resembles something that happened before, right around this time in 2015. KPIX5's Emily Turner on the potential consequences in the water and on shore.
About 4 years ago, WildCare says they saw a massive influx of seabirds. And considering what's happening in the Pacific Ocean now, they're worried that's going to happen again.
Offshore in the cool blue waters of the Pacific is a marine heat wave, scientists say. It mimics a similar phenomenon from 4 years ago that wreaked havoc on the ocean's ecosystems.
We're looking at a lot of really bad things that could happen in the ocean. For one, there could be a lot of fish die off, and that has ramifications throughout the food web. We saw sea lions dead and starving on beaches.
Or bird die-offs, like this one that happened right here in the Bay Area. WildCare rescued more in just 2 weeks of September 2015 than it had the entire year. And they're getting ready to see those staggering numbers again.
But we're preparing cages, we're preparing enclosures. When these birds come in, they're emaciated, they're dehydrated, they are very, very much in need of emergency care.
Yesterday that our oceans were the warmest ever on record in 2019. To put this into perspective, the amount of heat we've put into the world's oceans in the past 25 years equals 3.6 billion Hiroshima atom bomb explosions.
Global warming, and that studies show the oceans are getting warmer every year. According to a recent report in the journal Advances in Atmospheric Sciences, the amount of heat added to the oceans is equivalent to every person on the planet running 100 microwave ovens 24/7. The researcher warns that warmer oceans could lead to more severe floods, droughts and wildfires. They also claim sea levels will rise by 1 metre by the end of the century.
The study has found the world's oceans were warmer in 2019 than at any other point in recorded human history. The research carried out by climate and ocean scientists from around the world suggests the rise in temperature is irrefutable and yet further proof of global warming. Last year's oceans were just 1/13 of a degree Celsius warmer than the average. That was for 1981 to 2010. It sounds tiny, but the consequences could be catastrophic. Calm waters for now, but bubbling beneath the surface of our oceans, it's a very different picture. Scientists have been measuring how hot our oceans are, and the results are compelling. 2019 was the warmest our oceans have ever been. In fact, the warmest 10 years on record have all been recorded in the past decade. And a leading scientist says the amount of heat we've put in our oceans in the past 25 years is the equivalent of 3.6 billion Hiroshima atom bomb explosions. The result, according to scientists, extreme weather events like the recent bushfires in Australia. More than 2,000 homes have been destroyed and at least 28 people have been killed. Now NASA says smoke from these bushfires will travel around the world. Record floods have also been seen in places like Venice. In November, 80% of the city was underwater when the tides were at their highest. The mayor there blames the disaster on climate change. Apocalyptic scenes were seen in the Bahamas in September when Hurricane Dorian brought heavy rain and high winds, claiming at least 50 lives. Closer to home, parts of the UK were also brought to a standstill by heavy downpours in November. Fish Lake in South Yorkshire was one of the worst affected places after the River Don burst its banks. Many people are now questioning how many more of these extreme weather events we might see.
Away from this study is that the warming of our oceans is actually accelerating too, and virtually everywhere on our global oceans is significantly warmer. That accelerating rate of the warming of our oceans has increased 450%, and this is really interesting because it's kind of hard for, I think, the average person to wrap their head around just what that means as far as a couple degrees.
The heat is also making the ocean more acidic, which has enormous impacts on fisheries around the world. Warmer waters also means the oceans hold less oxygen. This can kill certain types of marine life and produces dead zones where fish just can't.
News tonight in climate change, of course, Lindsay, was a major issue in last night's debate. Tonight here, the alarming new numbers from scientists at both NASA and NOAA. Here's ABC's James Longman.
Those extreme and deadly wildfires continue to ravage Australia, and tonight, the alarming numbers. According to a new report, the last decade was the Earth's warmest on record. 2019, the second hottest year ever. Global land temperatures increasing, scientists say. The bushfires part of the dramatic fallout from climate change. And rising over Australia tonight, this phenomenon, the so-called fire clouds, spawning dangerous weather conditions, fueling the flames. The battle with the elements goes to the ends of the earth. Heat levels in the ocean, the highest ever recorded, melting sea ice at a distressing rate. One study finding the amount of heat being released by climate change equals 5 Hiroshima explosions per second.
We've made it. We've landed on Antarctica.
I saw the devastating reality firsthand, and climate researchers telling me time is of the essence.
I'm hopeful we can fight climate change, both here and at home.
And NASA says human activities are leading to record amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, which warms the planet. And if those emissions don't drop, we can expect much more extreme and an unpredictable climate. David?
Australia is on fire, and it's bigger than you think. 12.35 million acres of land have been burnt by bushfires so far. That's almost twice the size of Belgium, and 3 times more land than the 2018 California fires and Brazil's 2019 Amazon fire combined. Flames have reportedly reached 70 meters high. That's taller than the Sydney Opera House. At least 19 people have been killed and more than 1,400 homes have been destroyed. Residents and tourists have been forced to relocate.
Just get out while we can.
Nearly 500 million animals have died in New South Wales alone. The fires aren't just in one location. They're raging everywhere across the country. So what ignited this deadly crisis? Well, bushfire season is nothing new in Australia, but this summer has been one of the hottest and driest in the country's history. Since September, the combination of drought, unprecedented heat waves, and strong gusty winds has created a recipe for disastrous fire conditions. On top of that, the smoke from bushfires generates its own weather, sparking thunderstorms with lightning and strong winds, which create even more wildfires. Scientists have been predicting.
Been unprecedented. Landscapes, usually left unscathed, have been decimated.
Look, it's overwhelming, this fire. Right now, 150 fires burning, thousands of houses burnt to the ground, 12 million acres burnt and destroyed. Now, 12 million acres, think about it. That's about New Hampshire and Vermont put together. That's a big swath of land. Also, 500 million, and this is a big disparity, but you're looking someplace between 500 million and 1 billion animals killed by these fires. Now, Australians have been fighting these fires for months, as you've mentioned, and don't forget, this is the beginning of the Australian summer. It's a very dry year. It's a very hot year.
The once tranquil holiday haven under siege again. The sky turning an eerie blood orange, then almost pitch black at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Very eerie, and it's incredible, isn't it?
The sky looking as apocalyptic as this, it's easy to see why aircraft simply can't come into town.
Pictures pouring in from the fire-ravaged south coast we could barely believe.
Bushfires have burned more than 12 million acres here, an area 40 times the size of Los Angeles.
The high winds saw 3 blazes merge at the border.
The size of 500,000 football fields.
Flames so powerful they can form their own weather. On the weekend, one massive fire jumped a river.
The eerie fire glow has travelled all the way across the ditch, with the Auckland sky turning orange from an unprecedented layer of smoke from our bushfires. The haze was so bad that a large number of New Zealanders called emergency services.
Here we are, New Year's Eve, midday in Bateman's Bay.
The sky just getting darker and darker.
It is not looking good.
So quickly, I can't believe it.
This is midday in the middle of Bateman's Bay.
You know, I've never really seen it this bad, so I think it's not usually like this. Australia's usually, you know, a lovely place.
Heavy storms across Israel are causing even more flooding throughout the country, and some of the videos that are coming out are just shocking, honestly.
An intense winter storm is hitting Israel for the second time in just 2 weeks, causing severe flooding and roadblocks. Dramatic scenes of entire streets underwater. The intense rain in northern Israel also caused the sea level of the Sea of Galilee to rise almost half an inch, and is expected to rise even more. And just north of the Sea of Galilee, 4 inches of snow fell overnight in Mount Hermon on the edge of the Golan Heights.
Emergency services have been scrambling to rescue people trapped in cars on waterlogged roads in the north, more specifically, and 15 kids were actually even rescued from a flooded kindergarten. So stay safe in this crazy weather. You will not be biking home today.
Flooding and roadblocks. In the northern port city of Haifa, some 2 inches of rain fell during the morning hours. And further north in the city of Nahariya, close to the Lebanese border, dramatic scenes of entire streets underwater. The residents in Nahariya have been advised to stay indoors after 15 children were rescued from a flooded kindergarten. The intense rain in northern Israel also caused the sea level of the Sea of Galilee to rise almost half an inch, and is expected to rise even more. And just north of the Sea of Galilee, 4 inches of snow fell overnight in Mount Hermon on the edge of the Golan.
כל הציונות, תראו מה הולך. תראו מה הולך לציונות. תרים, 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 תרים! תרים חזק, תרים! תרים! תרים, תרים אותו! תרים אותו! תרים אותו כבר, תרים אותו! תרים, תרים, אל תפחד, תרים! תרים אותו, תרים! תרים אותו! תרים אותו, תרים! תרים אותו! תרים, תרים חזק! התינוק בפנים, זה לא אמיתי, זה לא אמיתי. התינוק בפנים, זה לא אמיתי. תבוא עם הטרקטור, תבוא עם הטרקטור, תבוא! תבוא עם הטרקטור, תוציאו אותו, תוציאו, תרימו! תרימו אותו, תוציאו אותו, תוציאו! תרים אותו, תלך עם הטרקטור! תלך עם הטרקטור לשם, לשם, תוציאו אותו, יש שם ילד! תוציאו אותו! תוציאו אותו שמה! תוציאו, הוא תקוע, התינוק באוטו, התינוק! מה, זהו, 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 זהו! זהו, תעצרו! וואי, וואי, איזה פחד!
Earthquake rocking Puerto Rico, the 5.8 quake striking as people slept. The latest challenge to the island, still reeling from devastating hurricanes 2 years ago.
Puerto Rico rocked by a 5.8 earthquake. In this neighborhood, houses cracked, shaken right off their foundations. It was one of the strongest quakes to ever hit the U.S. territory, causing small landslides on this highway. Drivers forced to avoid boulders during their morning commute. Officials say tremors have been hitting the area since late December, The quake striking at 6:32 a.m. local time.
Devastation in Puerto Rico. Take a look at that. A powerful magnitude 6.4 earthquake jolted the southwestern part of the island.
I was just looking on the USGS website. There was just a 4.4 magnitude, 5.8, 4.5. They won't stop.
New surveillance video shows a tremor hitting this convenience store after the largest quake in a century. A 6.4 rocked Puerto Rico.
This is the largest in a series of earthquakes that have hit the island in recent days. We have video from inside of a Barceloneta grocery store this morning.
Aftershocks forcing television news anchors to evacuate the studio during a live broadcast.
Vamos. Vamos.
A 6.4 magnitude tremor leveling businesses and homes, damaging schools. This church completely destroyed.
Now, if you're wondering how common a 6.0 magnitude or greater earthquake is, on a global scale, they happen about 120 times a year.
And has had about 700 earthquakes since the end of December. Most of those go unnoticed. And get this, after yesterday's 5.8 quake, I reached out to a seismologist with the USGS to find out what the chances were that there would be something stronger than a 5.8. He put the odds at 3%. And it happened this morning. The odds did not work out in their favor. Before we go, we want you to see this. Immaculate Conception Church in Guayanilla. We went there Wednesday. Built in 1841, it was destroyed by Tuesday's 6.4 magnitude quake. It's worth noticing what appears to be untouched. The statues have fallen, the altar's there, the side walls have both collapsed. But the gospel book, untouched. And on the wall there, you see the crack in it, but the picture of Christ appears to be untouched. Here's what happened over the last 48 hours. It happened Saturday morning, just before 9 a.m. A 5.9 magnitude earthquake centered off the southwestern coast rocked the entire island of Puerto Rico. It was the strongest quake since last week's devastating 6.4, which killed one person and damaged hundreds of buildings. Saturday's earthquake did not injure or kill anyone, but there were landslides.
Over the last few weeks, more than 1,000 tremors have displaced some 8,000 people here.
This is the Costa Sur power plant, the largest one in Puerto Rico. It is still out of commission after the earthquakes, and authorities estimate it could take a year to repair.
That scenes from the church is very touching.
Yeah, indeed.
The book is open, the picture of Jesus is okay. They have a long road back.
We cover hurricanes and earthquakes in Puerto Rico. It's worth remembering it's also a gorgeous place to live.
Tonight at 10, and this one might surprise some of you, but last year there were more than 200 UFO sightings in Arizona.
Days where you just wake up and you're so happy to be alive. Yeah, like today.
Today, that day?
That's awesome.
I'm very thankful to be here with you ladies.
In this new year, the sightings continue to grow of UFOs, but now there is this specific claim that is causing a frenzy.
And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along. Very seriously. Nick Pope is a journalist who has spent years researching UFOs for the British government. He says that UFOs aren't just real, they also frequently come close to crashing into commercial airliners, among other things. Nick Pope joins us tonight. Nick, thank you very much for coming on. So it's really not a question of, do governments believe UFOs are real? Yes, they do. The United States government does. The British government does. The question is, do they have any idea what they are, where they're from?
No, we don't. We keep an open mind on it. We don't rule anything off, take nothing off the table with this. Our point really is that whatever these things turn out to be, there is a serious defense, national security, and air safety issue here.
Yes. Well, so that's kind of the nub of it, and that's where my interest comes from. So why aren't governments encouraging the population to, as they say about terrorism, if you see something, say something, report sightings to the government so we can make sense of this potential threat?
Well, they should be, and that's what we certainly did at the Ministry of Defense for many years. We took it very seriously. Our own pilots were seeing these things. We were having radar operators track them. And we knew, again, through intelligence and through open source material, we knew that the Russians and the Chinese and others were working on this too. The problem was that just the pop culture baggage from the term UFO, flying saucer, little green men, people don't take it seriously. But they should.
military is finally admitting they have no idea what they are.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
And now, at least one pilot says he saw them daily.
New reporting this morning on unidentified flying objects in our airspace. The New York Times speaking with 5 Navy pilots who've all said they've encountered UFOs during training missions up and down the East Coast. The pilots even noting that the objects were accelerating to hypersonic speed, making sudden stops and instantaneous turns, something beyond the physical limits of a human crew.
Clearly, this is nothing that we're used to seeing out there. We submitted a safety report saying that there was an unidentified object in our working space, and we don't know what to do.
It's not to say they're alien craft, of course. But here is one of those UFOs. This is footage shot in 2004 from a US military aircraft. You'll see that video changing the focus briefly. The object jumps up in size just to see better before whatever it is they're filming takes off to the left. And then, of course, 4 years ago, there was another unidentified object which astonished the US pilots that were tracking it.
There's been a recent spike in UFO sightings, but now some are reporting seeing snake-like cylindrical objects moving in the sky. One was even spotted over the state of New York.
It's the UFO there. Got it in the shot.
The past few months, people from all parts of the country have claimed that they have captured strange objects in the skies on camera. But there's a specific sighting that is causing a frenzy. Take a look. The video, first published on YouTube by the user Tales from Out There, shows a snake-like stream of light spiraling across the sky. The user also claims that they saw a red orb-type object being dropped from the triangular figure. According to the Daily Star, the snake-like so-called UFO has been seen across 8 states in the U.S. in 2019 alone.
It's going over the lake now.
However, skeptics say it could be anything from drones to satellite launches. Seeing flying objects in the skies these days has never been so common.
They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
Meantime, in September, the Navy confirmed UFO videos are real. In fact, the Navy was prompted to draft formal procedures for pilots and other personnel to document these encounters because of a recent uptick in strange sightings over the military airspace. Nick Carnez, an ex-United States Marine Corps soldier who served in Afghanistan as an intel officer, said in a statement, "We have reports from various countries across the globe of witnesses seeing similar objects."
And listen, nobody at the Department of Defense is saying these are extraterrestrial. In fact, they say that there could be earthly explanations for all of this, but a lot of people are left wondering, guys.
I like how you did the air quotes, earthly explanations. We'll see.
Says these are unidentified aerial phenomena or UFOs for any other. They're not actually saying extraterrestrial. They're saying, let's take a good look at this. And I think as a scientist, we have to acknowledge this, that it's time to take a closer look. There's enough good reports by good observers. One would argue that pilots are pretty decent observers. If they're saying something they can't explain, maybe it's time to take a closer look.
The heaviest rainfall in more than a decade has caused deaths and flooding in Jakarta and surrounding areas in West Java. The rain began on Tuesday night and triggered landslides on the city's outskirts. Indonesia's meteorology department has called the rain very extreme. Nearly 20,000 people were stranded as Jakarta's domestic airport was shut down after its runway became submerged. People have drowned and others have died from hypothermia or been electrocuted as power supplies were damaged by the flooding. Thousands were forced to evacuate their homes. Crews are pumping out flooded areas and rescuing those who are stranded. The Indonesian Disaster Agency says the rains and rising rivers have submerged at least 90 neighborhoods. Flooding is common in Jakarta. This is monsoon season, and forecasters say more downpours are on their way. Scott Heidler.
In the different neighborhoods, unfortunately, are not so lucky. Their neighborhoods are flooded. They're still assessing the kind of floods that are engulfing the city right now, but some of the most hit areas, I would say, in the northern part of Jakarta.
So Anta, what's causing this current bout of flooding? Is it about bad water management, poor drainage, low-lying floodplains, or is it more complex than that?
It's all of the above. It's a complex issue, but as you pointed out, those three factors and more have been contributing to the floods. First of all, Jakarta sits on a low-lying plains and has been expanding since the city was founded several hundred years ago. And now it's a totally urban jungle, concrete cover the city in many, many places. There's less greeneries and green spaces to absorb rainwater, for example, and there's a poor drainage system. And coupled with that, many residents of Jakarta have been pumping water from underground, from the aquifer, for their water needs because the water from the main supply is still inadequate. And this led to subsidence of the city. In fact, Jakarta has been said by many experts is one of the fastest sinking city in the world. Because of that, the 13 rivers that pass through Jakarta, two of the big ones include Ciliwung River and Cisazane River, cannot properly drain to the Java Sea.
Let's quickly talk about the government response. I mean, what's the government doing about all of this, and can it cope with this level of natural disaster? Because these are enormous floods.